Hey everyone, welcome to this module where we're going to focus on layer fundamentals. Now, throughout this initial module, we're going to tackle the basics of Photoshop layers. So we'll do an overview of the layer panel interface itself, and of course discuss creating and modifying layers and tackle several other areas of importance when it comes to layers. Now in this lesson, let's just take a look at the actual layer panel itself and begin to understand how it all works. So let's go ahead and create a new document first. So I'm just going to go to File, New, and we'll just call this UI. And down here, I'm going to use 850 by 550. You can use whatever resolution you want in size. Leave this at 72 RGB. Background contents, we can just specify white and then hit OK. All right, so let's make sure first that we have the layer panel in view. So just go to Window, and down here we'll see Layers. Mine's already on, and we can see it is right here. And if you wish, you can drag this off or drag it back into this panel group. So starting at the top of the Layers panel, the first area of importance are the layer filters right here. Now this area simply allows you to sort through different types of layers, and this drop down right now is grayed out because we don't have any actual layers aside from the background. So let's real quickly just add a shape layer, and I'm going to use the ellipse tool. Just left click, drag, hold down, and this pop out menu will come up, and I'm just going to create ellipse while holding shift. All right, there we go. So now we see this is now enabled. And we can see we have the kind that we can specify. We have the name. So for example, if we want to only turn the layers with the name ellipse in them, we could see it took away the background layer. And it gives you a lot of other options that allow you to really just sort through a very large document with a lot of layers. So if we leave it back on kind, by default, we have some of these initial layers right here. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. Or these properties here, we can filter them by pixel layers, adjustment layers, type layers, shape layers, and smart object layers. So the next area of importance here is the layer blend modes. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the layer blend modes in a different lesson, but in short, these blend modes allow you to determine different states of the layers based on the other layers around it. So just to quickly demonstrate, let's create two circles on two different layers. So first we already have this one. Let's double click on the thumbnail here. We'll make this one red. And I'll go ahead and duplicate this by right click and hit duplicate layer. We will move it over just holding shift, and we'll make this one blue. All right, so I'll select both of these layers and just get them here to the center. And if I take the top blue copy and we click on our layer blend modes, you can see if we start to go down the list, let's click on darken, how that affects it. Now you can use your keyboard down arrow key after this is highlighted and selected, and you can go through these to see what exactly happens. And this is the purpose of the layer blend modes. Now the next area of importance is the opacity and fill right here. The opacity percentage allows you to control through a percentage value how transparent a given layer is. And so the fill option does the same thing, except it only affects the contents of the layer and not the graphics that are added to it, like layer styles. So to demonstrate, let's add a drop shadow to one of our circles. So we'll take this blue copy here. We're going to double click just on the right side, and that brings up our layer style dialog box. And let's add a drop shadow down here. And by the way, we will do a more comprehensive overview in another lesson. And let's go ahead and if we just move this over, we could see this very basic drop shadow. And we'll take the opacity up to 100%. All right, just something simple like that. We'll hit OK. Now, if I change the opacity to say around 50%, we'll see it affects everything. The shadow and the shape itself is affected. Now, if I turn it back up to 100, but we change the fill to 50%, watch what happens. You can now see the shadow was unaffected. And you can see how this is so when we experiment with different fill percentages. And so in some cases, this would actually be handy. Now, the next area of importance is based on lock right here. And we have different modes. And you can see initially these ones right here are grayed out. That's because we don't have a rastered layer. So I'm going to create a new layer by hitting Control-Shift-N. And we'll just hit OK. And I'm going to use the brush tool. And we'll use a large size here, maybe around 360 pixels. And I'm going to just make this color green for now. Okay, now to demonstrate how lock works in response to this first icon, which is lock transparent pixels, I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to click on it. You see the lock shows up. And if I change the color real quickly, we'll say maybe just to a blue. We'll hit OK. We'll make it a little bit smaller. Watch what happens. So if I start outside, we could see it's only adding the actual stroke to the portion, or the visible portion of this layer. And it even becomes less visible based on these transparent, soft pixels out here. And it becomes completely transparent, and you cannot see anything if it's outside of it. So it's kind of like a clipping mask, if you know what those are already. If not, we will do an overview. But except it's just baked right into the layer. All right. So of course, if we disable that and we do the same thing, we can see the whole stroke. Okay. The next section right here is lock image pixels. So if we click on that, and we try to use, for example, the eraser tool, it won't work. And we also have this right here, which is the lock to position. So we could still add or remove. But if we try to move, you'll see it will not work. And then over here, we have prevent auto nesting into and out of artboards if you have an artboard canvas. And then of course we have lock all, in which you can't really do anything with the layer. And the next area of importance is where the actual layers are listed. Now it's very simple, as you can see, and all layers share the same basic layout. You could first hide layers. Then you have a small thumbnail preview of the content that's inside the layer. You have the layer name, which you can change by simply double clicking. And you have to the right, if there's any effects, an icon that's denoted as seen here, in which you can quickly modify layer styles. Okay. Finally, down here, we have some icons that give us a quick way of accessing routine layer-based functionality, including adding layer styles, layer masks, adjustments, group layers together, and finally creating and deleting layers. Now with that said, that's the end of this very quick rundown of the layer panel interface. And if you are still confused by some aspects of it, don't worry. We're going to take a closer look at much of what we just overviewed. So in the next lesson, we're going to analyze how we can create and modify layers. I'll see you then.